As I'm sure everyone is aware, some of the biggest news right now in the business and tech industry is the consistent layoffs amongst the major tech players. Google has recently just added to that, laying off 12,000 people. On top of this, Microsoft had previously laid off 10,000, Amazon had laid off more, and same with Apple. This is over news that they possibly expanded too much during the pandemic times with massive growth and people staying home. Companies are now cost cutting and becoming more efficient. You can see it across all the major tech players, and this is much necessary now, especially with the stocks going down and the overall market reacting as such. To understand this better, you can take a quick look at the QQQ, which tracks the Nasdaq Top 100, and you can see the downfall in the rough year it's had. This pretty much reflects a lot of major tech players and the rough year that they've had. Kind of going through the overall tech market, the first one to kind of lay off lots of players was actually Twitter, but now that's no longer a publicly traded company after Elon Musk took over. It's now a private one, so you can't really see the stock price of that. But you look at some of the other players. Meta had a horrible year, but you check the last month and how positively people have reacted to the news of them cutting back and stepping away from virtual reality and kind of being a bit more serious about turning over a profit. Obviously, all these companies make lots of money and already were making lots of revenue, sit on a lot of cash, but this is really what shareholders want. Even you take a look at Google, great day for Google, up 5.34%. People are really reacting positively to this news that they are going to be stepping people back. And even though it might not be great for workers, but from the corporate investor side of things, it's actually very good, or it's been reflected very good in terms of the stock price. You can see up 11% this month. And kind of going through some of the articles that have been released, this was a really good one that I read through myself. It kind of goes a bit deeper into the Google company-wide layoffs and how Google's kind of handling the situation. I know I read that they were going to be paying out their employees who are being cut for 16 weeks and then an extra 2 weeks for every year that they worked at the company. And it is an interesting read about how potential employees who have recently got promotions or new hires are being laid off, and that can really affect people, especially if you just moved and relocated for the job, or you've been budgeting for that pay which has now changed, trying to find a new job. But again, this is the reality of the world, and people do lose their jobs. It happens a lot, and especially in times like this, especially with companies, the pressure that they're on. And yeah, even companies as great as Microsoft, they've stepped back and admitted that they potentially hired people too fast. And you can just look through and kind of read through for yourself kind of each company's take on why they slowed down and why they cut back. And I think the perfect one to really go through was Twitter. And this one shows you Twitter's down to fewer than 550 full-time engineers. They've cut, it said it's shedded around 80% of its employees since Elon Musk took over. And as someone who, I'm not often on it, but you use it, you can see that the app still works fine. And you can kind of see that potentially they did not need all these employees, and that cutting back has been a real positive for them. I mean, you look at the company now, and yeah, it had the headwinds when Elon Musk originally took over and lots of controversy, but now it looks like it's running way better. Much less employees. They're trying to turn more of a profit, become more of a profitable revenues business. You see the subscriptions, and you can see kind of what the goal is with Twitter. And that is good for an investor. If you were still an investor, I understand that they're a private company now, but this is really what you'd be looking for. They're cutting back costs. They're trying to be more effective, trying to be more efficient. And yeah, as a shareholder, that's pretty much what you want. And I understand it's rough for employees who have lost their job. And yeah, your thoughts go out to them, and hopefully they can get a new job somewhere else where they can kind of stay for a long time and get more stability. But strictly from a shareholder investor's point, it looks good that companies are really taking this seriously. You can see even Amazon, they cut back, they stopped doing their charitable causes, they stopped donating, or they paused it. And yeah, that's how you know it's serious, when companies stop doing projects like that. Even Meta cut back on the virtual reality side of things, Alphabet stepping back on certain parts of the business. they're really trying to focus in, and that's kind of what's going to be the case for 2023, is kind of becoming more efficient and kind of hopefully cutting back on expansion, or some of the expansion that didn't work in 2021 or 2020 with COVID times, when companies were just going. And yeah, it's just the life of a major company. You have to keep adapting, and that's what they're doing. You even look at some of the best companies in the world, how rough of a year they've had. Look at Apple, down 15%. And overall, the tech layoffs and layoffs in general aren't something new. And this article by the New York Times actually went through it well. And it's the tech layoffs shock young workers, but not the old people. And that is true, and you kind of read through it, and it kind of gives you two different people. One, a younger person who was laid off with lots of other people, and then one, an older person who's been an engineer and has been around and kind of seen this happen before. And it kind of shows you that, yeah, you do have to kind of prepare yourself for the worst and be aware that stuff like this can happen. And that's why it's so good to have a skill, or especially these workers, a lot of them are skilled workers and will find jobs elsewhere. So it's not the blue collar people that are being cut back, like the factory workers as much. It's more of the engineers and the people working in the office that are going to be feeling this one the worst. And just kind of reading through it, this software engineer was laid off twice in 18 months and was out of work. And that is kind of the reality of it, and you don't want to see that happen. And that's why it's good to see employers such as Google offering long-term employees extra money for an extra cover for the years that they worked, and kind of trying to leave on a positive note. For that way, if they do end up coming back, you never know in the future if there's a new opportunity or Google's hiring again for different roles, then maybe those people have a good outlook still on the company, can come back and you can get existing quality employees. But yeah, my thoughts going forward, I think it's good. As someone who invests heavily into tech, it takes up a decent amount of my portfolio, especially this one. This is kind of what you want to see, especially after a rough year. Them kind of being cold-hearted and cutting back on, you could say, unnecessary employees, especially in the case of Twitter and other big companies, where you can kind of question what were they doing. If everything's still working fine and they've cut 80% of their workers, what were the other people doing that was really necessary? In terms of my portfolio, I've hopefully been using it to buy in a little bit more into tech and kind of my tech positions, because I haven't had this portfolio for too long, and just kind of growing them. And you can see Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and even the S&P VOO have lots of tech stocks in it. So it is something that's really important to me as an investor. And going forward, I think I'll probably continue investing now. You can see the great day that a lot of these stocks have had. Google up 5.34, Microsoft up nearly 4%, the overall market up nearly 2%. It's just been a really strong day for tech. And yeah, the market's kind of reacting good to this news. I've done a prior video on big tech stocks. It did decently well, especially in my channel, about the fall of tech stocks and kind of when they were falling and kind of what was going on and all the extra expenses that these tech stocks were kind of putting on themselves almost. It's nice to see that kind of some of the things I spoke about in that video have come true. Investors, kind of words coming through. You can see when big firms speak to them, saying that some of these employees obviously aren't necessary and that they are just an expense and that they do need to be more efficient. And I think going forward as an investor, this is kind of the good news that you want to hear. Not people losing their jobs, but these positions and these companies trying to be more effective. Overall, I don't see too many further cuts coming for any of the major companies. Potentially they might still lay off some other people here and there, but that's natural. They're still going to be hiring the top talent that comes out of colleges, universities. They're still going to be getting their hands on them, but in terms of further cutting back, I think this is the majority that will happen. Potentially there'll be more for other companies, but I'd say this has been the brunt of it. You can see all the major players have all done it now. And yeah, it's not good news, but it's eventually the real world, and that's how things tend to happen. This was just my take and my opinion, and kind of going through what my thoughts were on these layoffs. Leave your thoughts in the comments on how you think these companies have handled it, and your thoughts as a shareholder if you're invested in any of these companies, and what you believe the way going forward is for them. especially during tough times like this for each company. Cheers.